1 month, Aaron. That's all I'll give you to prove you're worth my time." Those were the venomous words Melissa Walker spat at her crippled husband before strutting upstairs, convinced she held all the power. But while she mocked him as a broken man, Aaron Walker was already preparing the most devastating revenge a betrayed husband could deliver. When the 30 days were over, Melissa would discover the price of her arrogance, and it would cost her everything. She had no idea the silent man in that wheelchair was orchestrating the kind of legal and financial ambush that would leave her name echoing in shame. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about marriage, loyalty, and betrayal. Viewers, if your spouse gave you 30 days to prove your worth, what would you do? Beg for their love or plan their downfall? Tell me in the comments. Melissa Walker's words cut sharper than broken glass as she stood over her crippled husband in their Dallas living room. "I need a month to decide if you're even worth my time." The neighbors outside froze when they heard her voice spill through the open window, and Aaron Walker, once a man who built skylines, sat silently in his wheelchair, refusing to beg. Why would a wife set a cruel deadline on her own marriage? How could a husband so broken sit calm as if he knew something she didn't? What secret was Aaron hiding behind that locked study door at the end of the hall? And when the month was over, what would he do that shocked her more than she ever imagined? Melissa's heels clicked against the hardwood as she crossed the room, her frame tall, her features still radiant at 35. She wore her beauty like armor, red lipstick, diamond studs, a designer dress Aaron hadn't seen before. The woman who once laughed in paint-splattered jeans at construction sites beside him had disappeared, replaced by someone who thrived on envy and attention. "Did you hear me, Aaron?" she asked, folding her arms, her tones slicing the air. 1 month. I've wasted enough of my life." Aaron's eyes lifted slowly. His jaw was square, his face thinner now, framed by strands of dark hair that had grown unruly. Once, he had been the city's golden engineer, earning contracts that reshaped Dallas's skyline. But 2 years ago, a crane collapse crushed his lower spine. Since then, the world had only seen a broken man bound to wheels. "I heard you," he said simply, his voice even, unreadable. Melissa scoffed, expecting more. Begging, at least. Instead, his composure unsettled her. In the first months after the accident, he had wept at night, terrified she would leave. She had basked in his vulnerability then, relishing her power. But now his silence felt different, calculated. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, lingering on the locked study. She had tried once, months ago, to force it open. Aaron had stopped her, his hand firm on the wheel of his chair. "There are parts of my life you don't understand, Melissa. Don't try." She had mocked him then, laughing bitterly. But sometimes, late at night, when she heard his muffled phone calls, when men in suits came to visit and left quietly, she wondered what he was hiding. "Pathetic," she muttered now, turning toward the staircase. "You can't even fight for me anymore." Aaron's gaze followed her only until she disappeared upstairs. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles pale, but he didn't shout after her. Instead, his eyes drifted back to the study door. Behind it lay folders, contracts, and numbers Melissa had never seen, the kind of information that could end a marriage or end a life, depending on how he chose to use it. And Aaron Walker had already decided the month she demanded wasn't her test for him. It was his trap for her. Melissa's month-long trial began the very next morning. She floated into the kitchen, draped in a silk robe, sipping her coffee like a queen surveying her kingdom. Aaron was already at the table, his chair angled toward the sunlit window, a plate of scrambled eggs cooling in front of him. "You didn't make these," she said, glancing at the food. Her voice carried the faintest sneer. "No," Aaron replied evenly. "I asked Mrs. Delgado to stop by." Melissa's lips curved. Not a smile, something sharper. "Hiring the housekeeper without asking me, are we?" she thought. Out loud, she said, "Well, at least someone's still earning their keep around here." She brushed past him, letting her robe graze his arm. Aaron didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes flicked toward the hallway. Behind that study door lay the documents that would decide both their futures. Her laughter from the living room carried a cruel edge. She had turned on music, upbeat, shallow pop tunes, and was on the phone with a friend. Yes, I might be single soon, she teased loudly, ensuring Aaron heard. A woman like me shouldn't be trapped in a mausoleum with a man who can't even climb the stairs. Flashbacks gnawed at Aaron's quiet. He remembered when Melissa had been the one bringing him meals in bed after the accident. Her eyes red from crying, her words soft. I'll never leave you, Aaron. We'll face this together. That Melissa was gone, replaced by someone hungry for freedom, someone who forgot that promises meant more when life was hard. Later that week, she paraded him at a cocktail party hosted by his former colleague, Caleb. Melissa wore a glittering black dress cut low enough to turn heads. She clung to Caleb's arm when she thought Aaron wasn't looking. Aaron! Caleb greeted him with exaggerated cheer, slapping his back as though addressing a child. Glad you could make it out. Aaron shook his hand calmly. I never stopped making it out, Caleb. His eyes held Caleb's a second longer than polite, making Caleb shift uncomfortably. Melissa interrupted with a laugh too loud. Don't tease him, Caleb. He's retired now. I'm the one deciding where this marriage is headed. Her words, playful to the crowd, were acid to Aaron. A few guests chuckled awkwardly, clinking glasses, not sure whether to pity or laugh. Aaron's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He only studied the way Melissa leaned closer to Caleb, whispering something into his ear. That night, when the house was quiet, Aaron wheeled himself into the study. He closed the door, flicked on the lamp, and pulled out the thick file marked Walker Holdings. Inside were contracts, hidden bank accounts, and a lawsuit settlement that hadn't yet hit the papers. His reflection in the glass frame above the desk was sharp, determined. Melissa thought this month was about him proving his worth. In truth, it was about her revealing her betrayal, and every laugh she shared with Caleb, every careless insult, was a thread tightening around her own neck. Aaron allowed himself a rare smile. 1 month, he whispered. That's all I need. The days that followed revealed just how far Melissa was willing to go. She had grown reckless, as though the 1-month deadline she'd handed down freed her of any responsibility to hide her contempt. On a Thursday afternoon, Aaron wheeled himself into the foyer just in time to see Melissa sweep in with shopping bags dangling from both arms. Her laughter echoed, tinged with a giddy sharpness. A delivery boy trailed behind, carrying more boxes, designer heels, perfume, jewelry. You've been busy, Aaron observed quietly. Melissa dropped the bags onto the couch and pulled out a silk scarf, draping it around her neck. If I'm deciding whether to stay married to you, Aaron, I have to imagine the life I could have without you. And that life doesn't involve discount stores. His eyes lingered on the credit card in her hand. His credit card. She noticed his glance and smirked. Don't look at me like that. What else is it good for? You're not traveling, not working. At least your money can still give me some joy. Aaron's lips parted slightly, but he didn't argue. Instead, his mind replayed flashes of their earlier years. Melissa at his side when he'd won the contract for the Trinity Towers downtown, clapping the loudest at the ribbon cutting, beaming at his success. She had loved the spotlight of his wealth more than the man behind it. That night, Aaron sat in his study long after she'd gone upstairs. He spread out the folders again, his fingers trailing over the embossed letterhead of Walker Holdings. Beneath the calm surface, he was piecing together a chess match, one that would leave Melissa with nothing but regret. By Saturday, Melissa grew bolder. She threw a dinner party in their home, inviting friends who hadn't visited since the accident. She strutted through the living room in a red dress that shimmered beneath the chandelier, making sure everyone noticed her. This is what happens when your husband retires early, she joked to the guests, raising her glass of champagne. You have to keep yourself entertained somehow. The laughter stung Aaron more for its cruelty than its volume. He sat near the fireplace, his chair positioned slightly away from the circle, as though he were an exhibit rather than a host. One guest leaned over and whispered, too loudly, "She doesn't even hide it anymore." "Does she?" The words weren't meant for Aaron's ears, but he heard every syllable. Melissa noticed his stiff posture and swooped in, patting his shoulder like a caretaker. "Don't sulk, darling. You know I'm only teasing." Aaron met her eyes, his expression steady. "Of course," he said softly. But inside, his resolve hardened like steel. Later, when the last guest had left and the house was silent again, Melissa kicked off her heels and muttered, "You should thank me. I'm keeping us social. Without me, you'd disappear completely." Aaron turned his chair toward her, his voice low but clear. "Without you, Melissa, I'd finally breathe." Her laughter rang out, dismissive, mocking. But what she didn't notice was the way his eyes shifted again to the study door. Each insult, each betrayal, was fuel for the revenge he had already begun to set in motion. Melissa's month-long trial became less about evaluating her marriage and more about flaunting her defiance. She spent more nights away from home, claiming late dinners with friends. But Aaron, who had grown silent and observant since his accident, knew better. He recognized patterns, whispered phone calls in the hallway, hurried showers before bed, perfume clinging to her hair long after midnight. One evening, Aaron sat near the window, the lamplight casting his reflection against the glass. The sound of Melissa's laughter floated up the driveway before she even stepped inside. Caleb was with her. Aaron could hear his voice, low and conspiratorial, as they lingered by the front door. "You don't have to whisper," Aaron said when they finally entered. His tone was calm, steady, but his eyes pierced through Melissa's facade. Melissa froze, then forced a laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. Caleb was just dropping me off." Caleb's smirk faltered under Aaron's gaze. "Good night, Melissa," he said quickly, avoiding Aaron's eyes as he slipped out. When the door shut, Aaron tilted his head. "You're careless," he murmured. Melissa's lips parted, indignant. "Don't you dare accuse me of anything. You're just bitter because you can't keep up?" The words were a blade, and she twisted it further. "I gave you a month, Aaron. A chance to prove you're still worth being married to. What have you done with it? Sat in that chair, brooding in your study, playing with papers that don't matter anymore?" Aaron's silence unnerved her, though she masked it with another laugh. He wheeled himself closer, stopping just short of her. "1 month is plenty of time, Melissa. More than enough." The way he said it made her chest tighten for reasons she couldn't explain. That night, as Melissa slept soundly upstairs, Aaron stayed awake in the study. He opened his laptop, the glow illuminating the steel in his eyes. A video call flickered to life. His attorney, Mr. Harris, speaking from across town. "Are you ready to file the motion?" Harris asked. "Not yet," Aaron said. "I need her to show her hand first. Every move she makes with Caleb. I want it documented." Harris adjusted his glasses. "You're playing a dangerous game, Aaron." Aaron leaned forward, voice low. "It's not a game. It's justice. She humiliated me in front of friends, in front of colleagues. She parades her betrayal like a crown. When this is over, I don't want her just gone. I want her stripped of everything she values." The attorney hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." Aaron ended the call and glanced at a framed photo on the desk. Their wedding day. Melissa had been radiant in white, clutching his hand, eyes shimmering with love that had seemed unshakable. That woman was gone. The one upstairs was a stranger, and Aaron would not let a stranger destroy him. The sound of Melissa's laughter with Caleb still echoed faintly in his ears. Each note was a promise that when the month ended, his revenge would be brutal, precise, and irreversible. By the second week, Melissa no longer cared who saw her. She draped herself on Caleb's arm at every gathering, laughing too loud, drinking too much, letting her hand linger on his shoulder while Aaron sat silently nearby. To the guests, it was entertainment. Whispers carried behind glasses of wine, stolen glances full of pity for Aaron and disbelief at Melissa's audacity. At a downtown restaurant, the scene grew ugly. Melissa leaned across the table, her perfume thick, her dress shimmering under the low light. Caleb whispered something in her ear that made her laugh until she covered her mouth with a manicured hand. She didn't notice Aaron's quiet watchfulness, or maybe she did and relished it. "Melissa," Aaron said, his voice calm, steady. "You're drawing attention." She turned to him, her smile venomous. "Better attention than pity? Isn't that what people feel when they look at you now?" The table went silent. A waiter shifting nearby froze in place, the air gone heavy with discomfort. Caleb chuckled weakly, trying to ease the tension, but the damage was done. Aaron's knuckles tightened against the armrest of his chair. He said nothing more, but in his silence was a storm Melissa couldn't read. Later that night, back home, Melissa tossed her heels onto the rug. "Don't sulk. You knew I'd be living my life while you sit here. You should thank me for still coming home at all." Aaron's gaze flicked to the clock. 2 weeks remained in the month. "Yes," he said softly. "Thank you for that." Upstairs, she collapsed into bed, scrolling through her phone until sleep took her. Downstairs, Aaron locked himself in the study. He opened a drawer and pulled out signed contracts, all bearing his name. Walker Holdings, the very empire Melissa thought he had abandoned, was not just alive. It was thriving. Quietly, he had shifted power to himself, orchestrating boardroom deals from the shadows. The study smelled faintly of leather and ink, the lamp casting a halo over the mountain of papers. He opened a folder marked Prenup Agreement. Melissa had laughed the day she signed it, waving away the attorney's explanation. "If we're together forever, what does it matter?" she had said then. Now it mattered more than anything. Aaron placed the prenup beside the evidence of her betrayal, photos his attorney's investigator had captured. Melissa and Caleb at the bar, her hand slipping into his, her lips brushing his cheek. Piece by piece, Aaron was building a case not just for divorce, but for annihilation. When Harris, his lawyer, called the next morning, Aaron answered with measured calm. "Everything's lined up," Harris confirmed. "The judge won't need convincing once she sees this." Aaron leaned back in his chair, the weight of months of preparation pressing into his chest. "Good. She wanted a month to decide if I was worth her time. When that month is over, she'll find out exactly what I decided about her." His tone was quiet, but it carried the promise of brutal revenge. By the third week, Melissa's cruelty was no longer hidden behind sly remarks or veiled threats. She flaunted her disdain for Aaron in public, as if humiliation itself were her weapon of choice. The charity gala was supposed to be about raising money for children's hospitals, an event Aaron once chaired with pride. He remembered standing at the podium years ago, introducing guest speakers, his name etched on plaques of donors. Now, he arrived quietly in his wheelchair, Melissa striding ahead of him as though he were an afterthought. She looked stunning in an emerald gown that glittered under the chandeliers. Heads turned as she entered, and she thrived on the attention, smiling, laughing, brushing past whispers. Aaron, by contrast, was greeted with hesitant nods and sympathetic eyes, the kind that pierced deeper than pity. Caleb appeared at her side within minutes, his hand brushing her waist as they leaned in close to whisper. Aaron caught the exchange, the smug confidence in Caleb's smile, the sparkle in Melissa's eyes. They thought he was defeated, a man trapped not only in wheels, but in irrelevance. The host of the evening approached with a microphone. "We'd like to welcome one of our city's finest minds, the man behind the Walker Bridges, the man who has given so much, Aaron Walker." The applause was polite, though thinner than it once had been. Melissa stepped forward before Aaron could respond. She placed a hand on his shoulder and laughed into the microphone. "Oh, Aaron's retired now. These days, he spends more time with his books than with buildings. But don't worry, I'm keeping our social calendar alive." The room chuckled awkwardly, caught between politeness and discomfort. Caleb smirked. Melissa's hand tightened on Aaron's shoulder, her nails pressing just enough for him to feel the sting. Aaron's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Thank you, Melissa," he said softly, his voice calm but amplified just enough by the mic. "It's true, I've stepped back. But stepping back gives you a better view of who's standing beside you." Melissa stiffened. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. A ripple of curiosity moved through the crowd. Aaron didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. His words planted unease, a foreshadow of something neither Melissa nor Caleb could interpret yet. Later that night, back at the house, Melissa tossed her clutch on the couch. Still flushed with champagne. "You embarrassed me," she snapped. Don't you dare turn people against me with your cryptic little speeches. Aaron wheeled past her calmly, pausing at the base of the staircase. I didn't turn anyone against you, Melissa. You're doing that yourself. Her laugh was brittle. You think you still matter? You think anyone looks at you as the man you were? Aaron turned his chair toward the study door, his hand resting lightly on the wheel. No, he said, his tone sharp as steel. They'll see me as the man I've become. Melissa rolled her eyes, heading upstairs. She didn't notice the faint light under the study door that flickered long into the night. Behind it, Aaron had timed every move, every document, every revelation. The gala wasn't humiliation. It was the final rehearsal. The trap was ready. And Melissa had walked into it smiling. The final week of Melissa's trial month arrived, and with it, her boldest betrayal yet. She no longer tiptoed around her affair with Caleb. She flaunted it with cruel confidence. On a Monday evening, Aaron sat in the living room, the steady hum of the grandfather clock filling the silence. Melissa swept in, perfume heavy in the air, her lipstick smudged as though wiped hastily. Caleb followed behind, holding her coat. You didn't say we'd have company, Aaron said quietly, turning his chair to face them. Melissa's smirk was sharp. I didn't think I needed your permission. Caleb's just here to help me with a project. Aaron's gaze lingered on her for a long moment, then shifted to Caleb. Do you always help married women with their projects this late at night? Caleb's grin faltered. It's not what it looks like. Melissa laughed, the sound brittle but defiant. Please, Aaron, don't play the wounded husband. You had your chance. You squandered it. Aaron's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. You've made your choice, Melissa. Just remember, every choice carries a price. She waved him off, dragging Caleb upstairs with her. The echo of their footsteps on the hardwood burned in Aaron's ears. He closed his eyes, inhaling slowly, gripping the arms of his chair until his knuckles whitened. The storm inside him was no longer silent. It was ready to break. Flashbacks washed over him, sharp and vivid. Melissa holding his hand in the hospital, whispering, We'll get through this, Aaron. I'll never leave you. Then another memory. Months later, of overhearing her sob to a friend on the phone. I didn't sign up for this. He's not a man anymore. The pieces of her transformation had always been there. He had ignored them, hoping love would outlast bitterness. But tonight confirmed the truth. Melissa's love had died long before her patience. Aaron wheeled himself into the study. He opened the folder labeled Confidential, Settlement. Inside was the final agreement from the lawsuit against the construction company. The accident that paralyzed him had also made him a multimillionaire. The world didn't know, not yet. He had kept it hidden, using shell companies and silent partners. Melissa believed she was married to a man who lived off scraps of pity. In reality, she was about to be stripped bare in front of everyone she cared to impress. The next morning, Melissa stumbled downstairs, disheveled but smug. She poured herself a coffee, glancing at Aaron, who was already dressed, his hair combed, his eyes sharper than she had seen in months. What's with the suit? She asked with a mocking smile. Got a big day at the office? Aaron looked at her calmly. Yes, today's the beginning of something new. Melissa laughed, rolling her eyes. You can't even walk into an office anymore. Aaron's lips curved into the faintest smile. That's what you think. His phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed across the screen from his attorney. All documents filed. Hearing scheduled. Aaron's eyes lingered on Melissa's face as he silenced the phone. She didn't notice. She thought she had already won, but the war had just begun. By Thursday of the final week, Melissa had grown drunk on her own arrogance. She believed Aaron was powerless, that his silence was submission, that her affair with Caleb was untouchable. She strutted through the city as though she were already free of him, basking in the whispers that followed wherever she went. That evening, she and Caleb attended a business mixer downtown. Melissa draped herself on his arm, sipping champagne, laughing at his jokes, soaking in the envious glances. But midway through the night, a subtle shift unsettled her. Conversations hushed when she entered groups, eyes flicking toward her before darting away. Even Caleb noticed. What's their problem? She whispered, forcing a smile. Caleb shrugged, but unease crept into his features. Maybe they're just jealous. Melissa brushed it off, but the tension clung to her like smoke. She didn't know that earlier that day, Aaron's attorney had filed for divorce and submitted every piece of evidence of her infidelity to the court. Photos, receipts, witness statements. Her betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a matter of record. Back at the house, Aaron waited in the study. The lamp glowed over his desk, casting shadows across the open folders, the prenup, the lawsuit settlement, the shares of Walker Holdings, all under his control. He heard Melissa's heels clatter across the foyer as she returned home, her laughter brittle, forced. She stormed into the study without knocking. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "People looked at me tonight like I was dirty. Like I was—" She choked on the word. Aaron didn't look up. He calmly adjusted the papers, sliding one across the desk toward her. "You said you needed a month to decide if I was worth your time. That month is over. Now it's my turn to decide." She snatched the paper. Her eyes widened as she scanned the bold header, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." Beneath it, the clauses of the prenup spelled out in cold black ink. Everything she had mocked him for, his silence, his wheelchair, his supposed irrelevance, had been hiding this. "You can't be serious," she stammered. "You'd leave me with nothing?" Aaron finally looked at her, his gaze steady, unflinching. "Not nothing. Your choices. You can take those with you." Melissa's breath caught. For the first time in weeks, her confidence faltered. She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "You wouldn't survive without me." Aaron leaned back, his expression unreadable. "I've already survived without you. The question is, can you survive without me?" Her hands trembled as she dropped the paper on the desk. For the first time, Melissa felt the walls closing in. The month she thought was her game had been his all along, and Aaron Walker wasn't finished. This was only the first strike. The final weekend of the month arrived, and with it, Melissa's confidence reached its peak. She had convinced herself that Aaron's divorce threat was an empty bluff, a desperate man's attempt to scare her into submission. She brushed it off as she dressed for the evening gala at the city's Grand Hotel, her emerald earrings glittering, her arm once again hooked through Caleb's. The ballroom was a swirl of chandeliers and champagne. Dallas's elite gathered in shimmering gowns and sharp tuxedos. Melissa thrived in this world, tossing her head back in laughter, whispering in Caleb's ear as if the entire room were hers. But the whispers had changed. People eyed her differently now, their smiles strained, their conversations hushed when she passed. "Why are they looking at me like that?" she hissed to Caleb. Caleb forced a grin. "Ignore them. They're jealous." But Melissa's stomach twisted. She didn't know Aaron had already set everything in motion. His attorney had timed the announcements perfectly, a press release hitting the city papers that very night. When the host of the gala tapped the microphone, the room quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming one of our city's greatest visionaries, the man whose company, Walker Holdings, has pledged $50 million to children's hospitals this year, Mr. Aaron Walker." The applause thundered, shocking Melissa into stillness. Her head snapped toward Aaron, who was wheeled onto the stage by his nurse. He wore a tailored navy suit, crisp and commanding, his hair neatly combed, his expression calm but resolute. Melissa's lips parted, her face paling. "50 million? Walker Holdings?" The room she thought she owned no longer saw her as the center. Every eye was on Aaron. "Thank you," Aaron began, his voice steady, carrying through the hall. 2 years ago, after the accident, many thought my career was over. Some even thought my worth was gone. But in silence, I rebuilt. While the world saw a crippled man, I saw opportunity. The audience leaned forward, captivated. Melissa's heart pounded in her ears. I created new partnerships, expanded Walker Holdings, and tonight, I stand before you not as a victim, but as proof that strength does not require standing tall. Strength is vision. Strength is resolve. The crowd erupted in applause. Melissa's face burned as whispers spread through the tables. She could hear fragments. She mocked him. "Did you know?" Unbelievable, she had no idea. Aaron's gaze swept the room, then landed directly on her. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. Sometimes the people closest to us fail to see our worth. But when masks fall, the truth always remains. Melissa gripped her champagne glass so hard it nearly shattered. Caleb shifted uneasily beside her, sweat beading his forehead. The applause roared again, sealing Melissa's humiliation. The man she thought broken had risen higher than she ever dreamed possible. And he had exposed her without even naming her. It was the first public blow. The brutal finale was yet to come. The morning after the gala, Melissa awoke with a pounding head and a knot in her chest. The memory of the applause for Aaron still rang in her ears, drowning out her own laughter from the night before. She dragged herself downstairs, expecting to find him brooding in the living room. Instead, the house was silent, except for the rustle of papers neatly arranged on the dining table. At the center was a thick envelope, her name written in Aaron's precise hand. She tore it open, her eyes scanning the first page. Finalized divorce decree. Her blood ran cold. The clauses of the prenup stared back at her, cruel and absolute. She was entitled to nothing. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "Aaron! What is this?" His wheelchair rolled out from the hallway, his posture upright, his eyes unreadable. "It's the future you wanted," he said calmly. "Freedom, no ties. No responsibilities." Melissa's breath came fast. "You can't do this." "After everything," Aaron cut her off. "After everything? You humiliated me in front of friends, paraded your affair in public, drained my accounts for shoes and champagne, and told me I wasn't worth your time. You wanted a month to decide if I was worth it. Well, Melissa, I decided. You're not?" She staggered back, shaking her head. "You wouldn't survive without me." Aaron wheeled closer, his voice dropping like steel. "Melissa, I've been surviving without you for years. You just never noticed." Her eyes flicked to the papers again, desperate. "This can't be legal." "It is," Aaron said. "My attorney filed it all. The court has every photo, every receipt, every witness, Caleb included." The sound of his name made Melissa's stomach lurch. "What do you mean?" Aaron's lips curved into a thin smile. "Caleb didn't just betray me. He betrayed himself. He works for Walker Holdings, remember? And as of yesterday, he no longer does. Security escorted him out this morning. Breach of ethics, conflict of interest. His career is finished." Melissa's hands trembled. She had clung to Caleb as her escape, and now that escape was gone. Aaron opened another folder and slid it toward her. Inside were glossy photos. Melissa with Caleb in bars, hotels, even in their own home. "You see, Melissa, it's not just about leaving you. It's about making sure everyone sees you for who you are." Her knees gave out and she sank into a chair. The woman who once shined at galas, adored for her beauty and charm, now looked hollow, stripped of her armor. Aaron straightened his jacket. "You told me I wasn't worth your time. But when history remembers the name Aaron Walker, it will be for the bridges I built, the hospitals I funded, and the empire I ran. When they remember you, it will be as the woman who threw it all away." Melissa's tears blurred the pages, her voice breaking. "Aaron, please." He turned his chair toward the study. "It's too late, Melissa." "You wanted brutal honesty. Consider this my answer." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving her alone with nothing but silence, and the echo of applause that wasn't hers.